Today is April 16th, 2026. So you will know if you're looking at this recording much later when I'm referring to and what classes I'm referring to. This week in class, Dr. Onye spent a great deal of time talking about 5-1, 4-5-1, and 2-5-1 into various chords. And I want to talk about that in the key of C. But you should learn this in all 12 keys. Plan to do that. I'm going to use a simple progression that covers all of the primary triads in the key of C major. If I start here and go down stepwise, you notice I've covered 1, 7, which is not a primary triad, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 5, 1. Now, each of these chords other than the 7 has a 5 chord and can also have a 4-5 progression that goes to it. It can also have a 2-5 progression that goes to it. So let's get into that a bit. If I was going to harmonize all this with triads and try to stick to major and minor triads, I would do the following. C major for this, E major for this. I know this should be a G sharp, but Meticulous goes one direction or another, flats or sharps. So in this case, I can't make it all flats and I can't make it all sharp. I have to be decided all flats or all sharps. So A minor, G, F, E minor, D minor, G, C. I'll do that one more time. One of the reasons I'm looking at triads is because typically we don't practice triads enough. And I'm noticing I'm stumbling because I'm wanting to go back into my familiar pathways rather than really looking at the triads, right? There's a world of beauty in triads if you look carefully. So that should be, obviously I need to practice it more, right? And obviously if you start here, or start here, or start here, if you want them lower, but all the inversions and then move using different inversions. For comprehension, probably practice them in root position, If you have any difficulty about what they exactly are, but then quickly move away from that into using inversions. Now, how do we do 5-1? All right, then that becomes this. Now, this is 5 of A minor. This is 5 of G major. This is 5 of F major. This is 5 of E minor. This is 5 of D minor. And this is 5 of G major, sorry. And then we're back to C major. Let me see if I can do that with more fluency. That should be automatic in any key. Right? You should be able to hear that and do that so that if you're playing a song, you can start inserting those kinds of things. We even had one that we looked at that had this movement in it. I'm going to play it and see. It was in E flat, actually. But it said, sorry. It said inverted E, inverted D, and inverted C. So there's a reason why you need to know this, right? Now that's 5-1. Once you have that, then you want to start looking at 4-5-1, which can be played in root position, but it can also be played with the third and the bass. There are all kinds of possibilities. For comprehension, learn it with the root first so that you know exactly what it is, but then quickly move to start using inversions because they sound, as you heard, they sound better. They're more interesting sounding. All right, so now I'm going to play a 4-5-1 to A minor, which means that I'm going to play D to E. Typically in class, we're doing this. That's inverted. It's much more interesting sounding. But they both work. Learn both of them, right? There's A minor. To get to G, we're looking at C, D, G, right? But by the way, I posted a PDF of this in WhatsApp, so you can look at that as well if you want. Okay, if we're going to F, then we're looking at, and then we're looking at, to get to E minor, and, sorry, to get to D minor. As I said, I need to practice this too. And then, and see if I can do that with a bit more fluency. The main thing is to take my time, right? Don't get in a hurry. Obviously, for performance purposes, I'm going to learn them with the thirds and the bass, right? Because I like the sound better. Sorry. Right? Those drop two triads are beautiful, but once again, they require practice. I've got to look at them. The reason I made this in the first place is because Dr. Onya asked us to play an incomplete walk-up, 4-5-1, into a particular chord, and I realized I hesitated. I shouldn't hesitate. All right, so here we go. Now I want to say, I'm going to A minor, so I'm thinking D major, E major, A minor, and now C major, D major, G major, B flat major, C major, F, A major, B major, E minor, G major, A major, D minor, and now D major, no, F major, G major, C major. Once again, see if I can do that better. So there's 451 to all of the major triads and minor triads in the key of C. But the minors, you can play harmonic minor or melodic minor, and that means a difference in the 4 chord. If it's melodic minor, you get a major 4 chord. So you get, for instance, this. That's using the melodic minor scale. Where you get a raised 6th and 7th. Yes, they should be F sharp and G sharp. So, but you could also do this, which is based on the harmonic minor scale. So it only has a raised 7th, right? So, and that's a very different sound, and you might prefer it in some cases, right? So if we try to employ that, then we're going to get this. Now I'm going to go to, now the G is going to be the same. It's not going to change because that's major. Now this one will be different because I'm going to E minor, so I'm going to get and now that's another possibility. Now, when we start talking about 4 and 2, there's only one note that separates the 2 from each other. Here's 4, here's 2. Get used to the idea that 4 and 2 work in place of each other. Depending upon the circumstances, you can use 2 in the place of 4 or 4 in the place of 2, at least in major situations and in many minor situations as well, right? Depending upon whether you're referring to harmonic minor or melodic minor, because remember, the third of the fourth can be major or minor in a minor key, and the fifth of the 2 can be a perfect fifth or a diminished fifth in a minor key, right? And it's, by the way, the same note, the third of the fourth, the third of the 4 chord and the 5 of the 2 chord. It's the same note, but it can be raised, as in the case of the melodic minor, or it can be the natural minor, right? The harmonic minor and the natural minor both use the same note there. So your 4 chord can be major or minor, and your 2 chord can be diminished or minor or diminished. So let's look at that for a second. If we're looking at 2, 5, 1, now once again, I'm still using triads. You can always add 7ths, right? But my idea here is comprehension, knowing what they are. So C, I'm going to A minor. That means I'm going to be playing, if A minor is my destination, that means I'm going to play B minor, E minor, B minor, E major, A minor. Okay, this one is going to be A minor, D to G. This will be G minor, C to F. This is going to be F sharp minor, B to E. This will be E minor, A to D minor. And then this one's going to be D minor, G7 to Z. Well, it's going to be A minor, D to G if you want to do that. And then now, see if I can do that a little faster. Now, I left out the one to G because, you don't necessarily need it. It's kind of redundant if you're practicing for comprehension at that point. So there's 2-5-1, with the 2 always being minor. But with that inclusion of the harmonic minor scale, you can have a diminished 2 going to your minor triads, and that's another sound altogether. That gives us this. B diminished, E, A minor. Now this is going to be the same. A minor, D, G major, G minor, C, F major. This is going to be F sharp diminished, B, E minor, right? And now E diminished, A, D minor, G, C major. Get that in all 12 keys. You'll be able to reharmonize songs more rapidly and at will. And as my teacher, Barry Harris, would say, that'll fix you. Happy practicing.